Today, I wanted to speak about the concept of man's dominion and ethical responsibilities in the world. It's kind of a dual idea. We know that the Torah introduces the concept of humanity's dominion over the earth in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. It says the following, "And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and all life that creeps upon the earth." Now, the question is, we're given a mandate not only to populate the earth with people, but to rule over the earth, to have this kind of leadership. But what does it mean to subdue? What does it mean to dominate? What does it mean to conquer? Does this grant humanity unchecked control over nature, over unchecked control over world affairs, or is there a deeper responsibility tied to this authority? Now, of course, we could say, no, that's basically it. And then it would be a very short sheer. But the fact is that there is responsibility tied to this authority. We have to understand what dominion actually means. And in order to do that, we're going to look at a piece from the Medrash in Breshit Rabbah on our verse. What does it mean to dominate over the fish of the sea? Says the Medrash. Rabbi Hanina is the first person quoted. If they, the human race, merits it, they will dominate. But if not, they will fall. Now, the way Rabbi Hanina comes to this idea is by looking at the Hebrew word used in the text for dominate or subdue. And I'll read it out. Vayomar lahem Elokim, God said to them, Peru uravu, be fruitful and multiply, umil'u et haaretz v'chivshua. Fill the earth and conquer it. Urdu. Urdu is a verb meaning to dominate. But it has the same root as the word laredet, to go down. So what Rabbi Hanina understands from this word is that it's a two-sided coin. If they merit it, what does it mean that they merit it? That they earn their right to have leadership over the world, then they will dominate. A rodan, for example, using the same word, is in modern Hebrew the word for dictator. That has all sorts of awful connotations, obviously, based on our experience of the past century, but we understand that there is someone entrusted with the care of the world. But getting back to this double meaning of Laredit or Lerdot, to dominate or to go down or to fall, if humanity lacks merit, it will fall. Second opinion in the Medrash, Rabbi Yaakov of Kfar Chanin said, one who fulfills the verse that says, B'tzalmenu kidmutenu, this is referring to the fact that man is created B'tzalmenu, in our image, kidmutenu, and in our likeness, in the likeness and image of God. one who fulfills that verse, who actually does emulate God to the point where he or she demonstrates that they are in the image of God, that will be somebody who is elevated to a position of leadership. And those who do not fulfill that verse will fall. Humanity is meant to be the pinnacle of creation. The two opinions in this medrash indicate that for human beings to take their place at the top of the pyramid of creation requires merit and that they emulate the Creator himself. What domination implies, or rather, the implication of domination becoming the fall of humanity, is that they fall lower than animals, in the sense that if they don't take responsibility for the world, and they don't lead from a spiritually elevated place, then they become vulnerable to life forms that are lower than humanity. The animals can prey upon us. And this is a state of affairs that is reflected in the spiritual world, but what it's reflecting is a spiritual failing. Humanity must either take responsible stewardship over the world, which means elevating themselves and caring for the world physically, or they're demoted to being below animal status. I don't know if we've seen it together, but Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in the Sefer Derech Hashem, The Way of God, which you can order online, it's a very wonderful Sefer, describes man as being an amalgam of both animal and angel. The animal side of man can bring him down, and the angelic side of man can bring him up. In other words, either the spiritual can fall into the depths of physicality, or the physical can be elevated through emphasis on the soul, emphasis on spiritual living, ethical living in this world. So when a human being who possesses this angelic nature fails to fulfill their potential spiritually, they essentially are worse than animals, because we don't have expectations above and beyond the instinctual and survival instincts of animals. We don't expect ethical behavior from them. If you've ever watched one of those nature shows, I always found them to be very traumatic, because it was never explained to me that, the animal kingdom doesn't operate the way we do. So you go on and you watch, you go on and watch lions rip a rhinoceros to shreds, and it looks very cruel and brutal. But that's just how they act. They're animals. Human beings, of course, do have something in common with animals. According to biologists, we are nothing but a higher order primate. But of course, we understand with the addition of a soul that we are way beyond that. On the other hand, if we don't pay attention to that part of our being, then we fall lower than animals. Why do we fall lower than animals? Because the potential for humanity is way greater, because they possess a spiritual side. So again, dominion that humanity has is conditional on merit and ethical conduct. Rulership, according to Rabbi Yaakov of Kfar Chanin, is only granted to those who fulfill the divine image and likeness within themselves. Without this moral and spiritual fulfillment, humanity loses its dominion and falls below even the animals it is supposed to rule. And the message is clear. Domination is not absolute. It's not a free pass. True dominion reflects emulating God, exercising responsibility, and elevating creation both spiritually and physically. And now let's take a look at two verses from Deuteronomy. The lesson of the fruit trees. And we just saw this in this week's Torah portion. It says the following, Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 19 and 20. If you besiege a city for a long period of time, waging war against it to conquer it, you may not destroy its trees by cutting them down with an axe, for you would eat from the tree. You shall not cut it down. And then the verse asks a question, an interesting point to ponder. Are trees like the man in the field who would retreat into the besieged city? In other words, very often when armies attack, they will destroy everything in sight. If you've ever heard of the concept of a scorched earth policy, that is the method, is to destroy absolutely everything. Not because we don't value what the plant kingdom can offer, but because we want to completely psychologically unhinge the people we're attacking. The Torah says, don't do that. Even in an extenuating circumstance like war, you may only destroy a tree that you know does not produce fruit, cutting it down in order to build structures for the siege against the city warring with you until its fall. Now, this is very interesting. From these two verses, we see that the answer to our question before, is the dominion of mankind absolute? No. The dominion of man over the physical world is not absolute. Human beings must preserve that which is good and beneficial to themselves and others, even in extenuating circumstances like war. Now, the various intricacies of the application of this mitzvah, which is called Bal Tashchit, do not destroy, are many. And there are actually circumstances where we could even cut down fruit trees, like, for example, if they are in the way, or if they are no longer producing fruit, or if we require their wood in order to build, as we said before, structures to continue the siege, so to speak. But there is still a nub of spiritual truth that we have to hold on to here. And of course, we have to take a few steps back and clarify that this mitzvah in its technical application applies specifically to Jews and not to B'nai Noach. We'll see in the Gemara that there's often a comment when a suggestion is made for a prohibition for Noahides. The Gemara will respond, if it was actually prohibited to them, then let that prohibition be counted in the list of 7 Noahide laws. And we see that we know what the 7 Noahide laws are. It doesn't contain any prohibition against cutting down fruit trees. On the other hand, many of the mitzvot, besides having a practical application in action for Jewish people, also have an irreducible ethical principle that they convey. In this case, it's the basic morality of promoting and preserving the good and taking care not to commit the wanton destruction of that which is good and beneficial. There's boundaries, and human beings are called upon to sustain and protect beneficial aspects of creation. Now, a side note, another reason why this mitzvah does not apply to Noahides can be found in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 59a. We have a very important statement, which is a general rule when we compare Torah law as it applies to Noahides versus Torah law as it applies to Jews. The Gemara says, Leika midam di Yisrael sharei u'le'ovid kochavim asur. There is nothing that is permitted to Jews that is forbidden to non-Jews. Now the Gemara attacks the statement. What, nothing? What about war brides? We're going to see that in this week's Torah portion. Eshet Yifat Toar, the beautiful woman. What about war brides? The reason that a war bride is permitted to Jews and forbidden to non-Jews is not because of a violation of the principle that we just mentioned. It's not because there happens to be something that's permitted to Jews that's forbidden to non-Jews in general. It's specifically forbidden to non-Jews because non-Jews are not authorized to conquer. The institution of taking war brides is obviously not something that is practiced today, even though it is mentioned in the Torah. It was a feature of the ancient world when the women of a besieged territory, whose husbands would likely be killed in war, would beautify themselves and present themselves to the conquerors in order to appeal to their mercy. But it's not a present day phenomenon. But we do find an important idea here, which runs contrary to everything that we've seen in world history. Noahides are not allowed, not authorized to conquer territory from each other. In fact, according to this verse, the only people who are allowed to conquer territory are the B'nai Israel, the Jews. But only the territory that has been granted to them by God. Only Eretz Israel is a territory which, if it is not in the hands of B'nai Israel, and the B'nai Israel have authorization to inhabit their land, must be conquered. But the B'nai Israel are not allowed to conquer anything else. And we see that also explicitly in the Torah. Now, if we go back to the topic of dominion and responsibility, the question is, what is the ethical principle that we can learn from the prohibition to purposely destroy fruit trees in war? The Sefer HaChinuch answers this question. He says the following: the root of this commandment is well known. It is in order to teach our souls to love good and benefit and to cling to it. And through this, good clings to us, and we will distance ourselves from all bad and destructive things. And this is the way of the pious and people of proper action. They love peace and are happy for the good of the creatures of other people and of the creatures of the earth, and bring them close to Torah. And they do not destroy even a grain of mustard in the world. A mustard seed is the smallest measurement that the Sefer HaChinuch could enumerate. And they are distressed by all loss and destruction that they see, and if they can prevent it, they will prevent any destruction with all of their strength. But not so are the wicked, says the Sefer HaChinuch, the brothers of the destructive spirits. They rejoice in the destruction of the world, and they destroy themselves, since in the way that a person measures, so is he measured. Meaning to say, we are treated from on high the way we behave in the world. Which is to say that he clings to it forever, as the matter that is written. It says in Mishlei, Sameach le'ed lo yinakeh, the one who rejoices in calamity will not be cleared of evil. And the one who desires the good and rejoices in it, his soul will dwell in the good forever. And this is a well-known verse. Since Nietzsche articulated the concept of nihilism, the world has had a type of philosophy to justify the tearing down of the most basic and fundamental aspects of human existence, such as knowledge or meaning or morality. And parallel to this, there have always been ideologies and religions in the world that employ destructive measures to advance their causes. And Then, of course, there are simply people and cultures that hate humanity and have no problem ruining things for everyone else. The Torah's emphasis on the value of good and the benefit it offers to humanity stands in stark contrast to the dark world created by these forces. Not only do we protect and preserve the world with this attitude, but we ourselves become an aspect of what is good about the world. One hand washes the other. If we promote the good, we become good and we enjoy the benefits of the good. Then it becomes our world. Then we have dominion. So much depends on the type of impact that we choose to have on the world around us. Whether that involves our participation in civil society, or raising children, or exploring nature, or standing for a cause, the emphasis has to be on the positive outcome we can join together to bring about in this world. That's what Hashem wants from us. Taking a look at the Medrash on Ecclesiastes, Kohelet Rabbah, we have a very interesting passage which illustrates beautifully the balance between dominion and responsibility. When the Holy One, blessed be He, created Adam, the first man, He took him and showed him all the trees of the Garden of Eden and said to him, "See my creations, how beautiful and exemplary they are. Everything I created for you. Make certain that you do not ruin and destroy my world. For if you destroy it, there will be no one to mend it after you." This piece from the Medrash illustrates the concept perfectly. God created this world for us, but He also charged us with the sacred responsibility to preserve and protect it. This is not simply an appeal for environmental consciousness. Our involvement with the betterment of the world can be upscaled or downscaled, ranging from global initiatives to the interaction between people. It's a call to be mindful stewards in every aspect of life, ensuring that we contribute to the flourishing of the world around us. And may Hashem bless us to know what role we should take.